You heard that earlier on the show. Two former candidates for the Tory nomination in a riding north of Toronto, which gets voted on tomorrow, are alleging the party did the opposite of hold an open and fair contest. Are their concerns problematic for the Conservative Party, or is this party brass essentially deciding who they want to run kind of par for the course? Let's bring back the front bench to talk about that. Dan Moulton, Gary Mara, George Sewell, and Laura Stone. We have a few people on this panel who have run a campaign or two. Dan, I'll start with you. Like, nomination races are oftentimes messy. The party wants one thing. A pledge for open and fairness appears to want something else. Like, is this par for the course from what you've seen, or are these allegations, in your view, credible and problematic for the party?
No, this is pretty typical. I mean, the cycle of we're going to have free, fair, open nomination contests, and then accusations like this is universal, right? Every party goes through this in the lead up to a major change election in particular, right? Liberals faced this in 2015 federally. Parties face this at the provincial level, coast to coast, particularly when the polls say they're going to win the next election. Their nominations become extremely desirable. People seek them out. You know, the reality here is that politics can be a cruel business. And I think both of these erstwhile candidates were the sort of sharp end of that, right? They've experienced the cruel nature of this business. I think the choice you have is whether or not you want to go out there and say that you question the integrity of the process. I mean, those are pretty charged words, particularly at times when we talk about disinformation and foreign interference in our election system. To go out there and say, I don't have confidence in the integrity of the process is pretty charged, and it's ill-advised if you're looking at a long-term career in politics. So I'm not sure that either of them made a very wise choice if they wanted to, in the future, run in a nomination battle or in a contest where they were actually the candidate for a party. I feel like you don't really do this, and it's a pretty common challenge lots of people face in politics. You got to sell more memberships. That's really the end of the day here. It appears that neither of these candidates were well positioned to sell enough memberships to win their local contest. Whether or not you're up against a juggernaut of more powerful party figures, that's the game, right? And people that out hustle and out fight the center of a political machine tend to have long careers in politics. These people clearly don't.
I totally get what Dan is saying, Gary. I think from when I was listening to them, like, I think they even could have been somewhat accepting of that. It's that the message that was delivered to them was not exactly what Dan laid out, which is like, guys, you just don't have it, and we think somebody has a better shot. It was essentially, in one case, you know, you broke the rules, and which could be very well be the case. That's what the party's alleging. She denies it. And in the other case, it was essentially this messy back and forth that resulted in her quitting. I think the decision to go public is interesting, though.
Yeah, I'd have to say that I agree with most of what Dan had to say, and this is not a unique circumstance. And as he correctly pointed out, particularly when it looks like, being a conservative is a way to get into the House of Commons, at least the way that the polls look today. I also agree, having participated in the process provincially here in Alberta, but having watched it, in both provincial and federal parties and across the country, this is not a circumstance that is unique to the Conservatives. In 2015, the nomination in, I think it was Don Valley with Mr. Hahn was interfered with. And you heard the Prime Minister testify that, he didn't want to change it because he was afraid of, maybe losing the seat. So are there circumstances where party leaders get to decide what goes forward and what doesn't go forward? It does remind me a bit of one political wag from Alberta says, just because we're, running in a democracy doesn't mean at the party level we have to practice it. And so there are all kinds of examples of this kind of business that goes on coast to coast. And it doesn't matter if it's a provincial or federal party. And, I do believe that, as you say, Vassy, it's unusual for somebody who may have the perspective of wanting to come back to run in a future election, that they would be so public about it. But stranger things have happened in politics, as we all know.
Yeah, my sense is, Laura, that they feel pretty wronged, both of them. And again, like, I get that this is the way it works. That's why I put the question to them multiple times. But I think they were under the impression it would be, like, the thing that you hear from the federal party is this is going to be an open and fair nomination race, and ultimately it wasn't, in their view, very open, and I think that's what took them, kind of prompted them to talk about it.
Yeah, I think from kind of a high level perspective, I think it's surprising to kind of see these two candidates come out and talk about not being the chosen ones. And I think particularly when it comes to someone like Sabrina Maddow, who was viewed as, when she entered the race, kind of the fresh face of the Conservative Party, someone who talks about issues that young people care about. And this is kind of like one of Poilievre's star candidates, is what people assumed when she entered the race. And for her to kind of come out and say the party was against me and it was rigged, I think that kind of speaks to more broadly what kind of team and party Poilievre wants to have. And so I think that's been interesting to watch, like from an outsider's perspective, that this was clearly not the kind of person that they wanted to run in this riding, that maybe they had some more preferred candidate, someone with more experience or who's run before, who has been in MV before. And maybe it's not the fresh face of the Conservative Party that many had assumed would run under the Poilievre banner.
Yeah, and sorry to everyone who just saw my face contort the way that it did. It was because I was looking at Laura's connection and I thought I wasn't on camera. It was
sorry.
I was worried that we were about to lose you. No, that's okay. I wanted to hear everything you had to say. Just jumping off of Laura. I mean, especially in the case of Sabrina Maddow, she's right. She's a very well-known Conservative commentator. Like she had caucus support. It did not look as though she was going to be able to sell as few memberships as the party is alleging she is. She did.
It is surprising. Because she does seem like a star candidate. You've seen these two women come forward for the Conservatives, and both of them having an issue pushing back or being pushed back by the party. You have to question which side's going on. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I've been on kind of all sides of this issue before. I'm not jealous of the Liberal Party for many things, but their kind of tradition of appointing candidates is one of those things that I am. It would be easier sometimes. I managed a nomination race one time with a star candidate, and if our leader could have just chosen her or put his thumb on the scale, I would have appreciated it at the time. I mean, we'll see how many more of these accusations comes forward, right? There's some rumors in Winnipeg that Lawrence Todt in Elmwood Strathcona is having some pushback from the Central Party with the Conservatives. So we'll see if that bears out and if there's a big series of these. But otherwise, I think you're right. A lot of these parties have these issues come up, and sometimes you just have candidates who aren't able to make it through and want to blame somebody else.
Everybody wants to be open and fair until it isn't, I guess. Okay, I got to leave it there. Thank you to the front bench. Appreciate the great discussion. Dan Moulton, Gary Marr, George Sewell, and Laura Stone.